In this demo, we're going to be doing a short clip where we're going to edit 3 videos together and explore some transitional elements and matting in After Effects. So let's start with our source files here. We're going to have 3 videos, and then we're going to have 1 audio track. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new composition. We'll call this Assemble. Okay, and we're going to make sure that this is set to about 18 seconds long, 30 frames a second, 1920 by 1080, hit OK. We're going to take our Country Fiddle MP3, we're going to drag it down in there, we're going to open that up. You can see if you click on the rollout, and then if you click on audio and click on waveform, it exposes our waveform. We can see the peaks and valleys here, and we can see where the music starts to change tempo. So this is what we're going to edit to. And really what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 3 kind of beats in the scene. I'm going to have a beat here where the scene fades in. I'm going to have a beat here where the audio or where we move to our second scene. And then I'm going to have a beat here where we transition into our final scene. So those 3 are going to be those 3 movies that we have. So let's drag those down. We can drag all of them in. And I usually put the audio clip at the bottom because you don't really ever use it once you've set it up. So I've got 3 clips. I've got this sunset. Let's just go ahead and rename this, call this City. I've got the sunset MP4. We'll just rename that sunset. And then this one is the Texas flag, so I'll rename this Texas flag. Okay, so if I'm going to drag the Texas flag out, I'm going to drag the sunset down, and I'm going to drag the city down to the very bottom. So like in Photoshop, the layers that are above the other layers are the ones that are going to override, so they're going to be the ones that are visible. So let's go ahead and kind of stair step them like this. So the city is at the bottom. It's the first clip that we have. The sunset is after that, and then the Texas flag is at the end. I'm going to go into my city. So I've got a couple things that I want to do. The first one is that my city, the sky is very light. I'm going to put some white text up here, so I want to alter that. So I'm going to go up here to Layer, New, and create a new solid. And I'm going to create an orange solid. And then I'm going to change the mode for this to color burn. You can also change it to classic color burn, or you can change it to overlay. You just want it to darken the scene just a little bit. So let's just change it to color burn. We'll change the opacity so that it's not quite as dark. And then with our orange solid selected, we're going to zoom out just a little bit here. We're going to go to our shape tool, select our rectangular shape, and we're just going to make a shape outside of the bounds of that solid and along the horizon line there. Now you'll notice that I'm making this a little bit bigger than my composition, and that's for a reason. Because now that I've created my mask, I'm going to change this to subtract so that the top part is the one that's colored orange. And then I'm going to change my mask feather. And let's just set that feather to about 300. Once I'm done with that, I go back and I deselect everything. Close that up. So now I've got my orange solid. I've got my city scene, and I'm going to add my text in now. So go to create a new text layer. I'm going to click here, and I'm just going to say escape to. You can also do it in non-cap, so escape to. I'm going to change that to be centered. I'm going to move this to the center of my scene, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller just to make it aesthetically pleasing. Okay, so now I'm going to transition this scene in. So if I scrub and you can hear the music's a little bit slower, so I'm going to make the transition in a little bit slower. So the easiest thing to do, because we have these 3 layers, is to create a new solid. Change this to black. And then we're going to call this black solid. And we're going to open this up and go to our opacity channel. At frame 0, I want the opacity to be 100. At 1 second, I want the opacity to be 0. So over the course of a second, we see this slowly fade in. That's going to be a nice soft fade. Starting at 2 seconds, I'm going to take my escape to text and I'm going to move that here. Starting at 2 seconds, I want that escape to text to fade in. So let's open this up, open up our transform, and turn our opacity to 0 at the very first frame of that. Go to 3 seconds and change that to 100. So now we have a 1 second fade in, we have a 1 second time to take it in, and then we have 1 second to fade the text in. Now you'll notice the text is discolored here because it's below the orange solid. I'm going to rearrange that so it's above it right there. Okay, so I've created these 3 parts. Now I'm going to collapse everything just so we can take a look at it. And let's just go ahead and bracket our preview window and take a look and a listen. Okay, so that's feeling pretty good. Let's move on now to the transition to our next scene. So the next transition that I'm going to make is I'm actually going to make a text element that is going to be the mat for our Big Sky Country image here. So let's go back here where we see our escape to. I'm going to move this, I'm going to move this down. And at 4 seconds, I'm going to create a new text element. So let's just click on new text, click here, and I'm going to type in all caps, Big Sky, and then a second line, country. Okay. And I'm going to change the name of my font to it's like Arc Reactor. Where is it? CGF Arc Reactor. So this is just going to be a bold font that has a very thick feel to it. I'm going to scale this up a bit so that it fills the scene. And then I'm going to change the leading so that it's a little bit bigger. So let's make that just a little bit smaller. Okay, so I am going to actually scale this text up, but if I scale it up using the current setup, I go here to transform and I scale, you can see that when I scale in, I'm not scaling into any of the letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to my tool set, my pan behind tool. I'm going to open that up and I'm going to drag the center point down into the center of the N. If I do that, now if I change the scale, you'll see that it'll scale directly from the center of that N. So starting at 4 seconds, I'm going to add in an effect that brings the text in word by word. So over here, you should see your effects and presets window. Mine is kind of hidden right in here. And I'm just going to type typewriter. And I'm going to drag my typewriter effect out into Big Sky Country. Okay, so I'm going to open this text up and go here to animator and then go to range selector. And I'm going to take these keys and I'm going to move them back to the beginning of my object. And then I'm going to slide my text down. So my text is actually not going to start here until 4 seconds. Now by default, typewriter brings the words in letter by letter. But we can change that if we go here into our text effect and go to advanced and change this instead of characters to be words. I'm going to move my keys a little bit closer together, so they're going to take about 1.5 seconds. So it's going to say Big Sky Country. You'll see it comes in word by word. Once I get to about 6.5 seconds here, I'm going to zoom my text up. So I'm going to go down here to scale, key my scale, and over the course of about 1.5 seconds, I'm going to scale my text up until it fills the entire screen. Now the text is actually not what I'm going to see. I'm not actually going to see the text. I want to see the sunset behind it. So first things first, let's open up our scale here. I'm just going to select the first key and I'm going to set it to flat tangents. So the scale is going to start a little less abrupt and then it's going to ramp up as it gets to the end. Close up our curve editor. And then I'm going to take this sunset movie and I'm going to start it at the exact same time that my Big Sky Country text comes in. So you can see by default that the image just shows up and it covers up the whole screen. Down here, I have a column. It's called Track Mat. So if I click on Track Mat and click on Big Sky Country, that's the text. You can see now when it comes in, It's using the opacity of the text layer, but the text layer is now hidden. So the text layer becomes my sunset layer, and I can see the sunset through the text. Now by default here, it's just an image on an image, and so they get a little bit lost. So I'm going to add 2 effects to this sunset movie. I'm going to go to Layer, Layer Style, and I'm going to go to Stroke. And you'll see by default it'll turn red. I don't know why it does that, but you just set it to black by default. And you're going to ramp up the number to be a little bit larger. In this case, I'll set it to like 14. And then I'm going to go to Layer, Layer Style, Inner Glow. And I'm going to go to my inner glow and make it just a little bit larger. So we're going to ramp up the size just a little bit. And your opacity doesn't need to be quite that strong. We'll just bring it down a little bit. So now you can see that Big Sky Country come in, and you can read it a little bit better. And now you can see as the text gets bigger and fills the screen, now my sunset fills the screen. We'll do one last thing here, and that is as our text ramps up, I'm going to key the opacity of my inner glow, and then when the text fills the screen, I'm going to ramp that down so I don't get that ring around the inside of the screen. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make a transitional element for that Texas flag that's going to come in. So if I close this up and I open my audio back up, we can see right here is where the music starts to ramp up. So this is where I'm going to want my Texas flag to come in. So let's go ahead and select our Texas flag. You can see that the first frame is set here at about 10.5 seconds. I'm going to go to Effect, Transition, Linear Wipe, and it will create this linear wipe transition on my Texas flag. And you can see that at 100%, the Texas flag is completely covered up. At 0%, it is not. Now I want this to go the other way, so I'm going to change the angle of that transition. I'm going to start the transition complete at 0, or at 100%. And over the course of about 1.5 seconds, I'm going to change this to 0. Now this transition is pretty harsh because it doesn't have any feathering. So I'm going to change the feather. You can see if you can click and drag, it just makes it so that it's a little bit more of a soft transition. So you just type 250 there, and you'll see now that as it transitions across, it's more of like a wipe across the screen. Okay, so now I've got my Texas flag, and I just need to bring in my last text element. So let's click on text, and we'll go to our text properties here, and I'm going to go back here to what is this font? This font here is Century Gothic. So I'm just going to create a new text element, and it'll be big by default, but I'm just going to say escape. Let's just hold on. Let me fix the text there. Undo that because I clicked and I typed in my Big Sky Country. If you don't want to do that, all you have to do is click the lock here, and you can't affect that. So let's click on my text, and I'm going to set this to Century Gothic. And we'll just call this regular, Century Gothic regular. And I'm going to change the size to about 100, and I'm going to change the letting to auto. So now if I click in here and I type escape, oops, I got caps lock on, escape to Texas. Okay, and I'm going to change the size of this text here. We'll just make it a little bit larger. And I'm going to make the Texas even a little bit larger. So just double click on this, select Texas, and then you can change the individual font size of that. Okay, so now I have that text. I'm going to add one more transitional element. Let's bring that text, and we'll start it at about 12.5 seconds. And I'll go back to the very first frame of that escape to Texas, and then I'm going to go here to my effects and presets, and I'm going to type in fade up, and there's one here that's fade upwards. You drag this down, put it on your text element, and by default it's going to take about 1.5 seconds, so you can see that it comes in word by word, it fades, and you can change the timing of that to be a little bit longer or shorter depending on what you want. So now I've got escape to Texas, and we can see that our audio is going to continue there. Let's go ahead and preview and see what we've got. Sometimes when you preview, it'll run through one time, and as it's loading those frames into memory, that audio will sound really distorted, but you can ignore it the first time. All right, and that was the complete animation that you need to export. So now we're just going to go to Control M or add it to our render queue. Set this to an H.264 MP4, and then go ahead and rename it. And you can just call it Big Sky Country, and then go ahead and export that. And that is going to be what you upload to turn in for this assignment. Good luck.